Ernie Claus is coming to town. It was a bitter cold but sunny day in December. That day also happened to be Christmas Eve. Here's the situation though. My parents, along with Colin's parents, Steve's parents, Frank's parents, and even Chad's parents were all members of a high-end wine tasting club. And for the past week, all the way up till New Year's Eve, they'll be overseas touring wineries in France. This meant that myself, along with my friends, would be alone for Christmas. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Nick, isn't it terrible to have your family be away from you for the holidays? And yeah, it is a little sad in a way, but the good news is that tonight, on Christmas Eve, I, along with Colin, Steve, and Frank, maybe even a few other people, would spend the night at Chad Dowalski's house, who's having a Christmas party. There, we do all sorts of activities such as white elephant gift exchanges, watch some Christmas movies, as well as just staying up late just to dick around. Anyway, I got in my car and drove on over to the Holly Hills Country Club neighborhood, where Chad lived. It was around 3 p.m. and was freezing outside. My car thermometer read that it was 9 degrees Fahrenheit. There was no snow yet, but starting the next morning, about 7 inches was scheduled to fall. Chad's house was all the way in the back of the neighborhood, and his street backed up to some woods that had a railroad close down the hill. You may be thinking that these details are irrelevant, but believe me, this will play an important role later on in the night, unfortunately. I parked in the driveway to Chad's house. Holly Hills is a pretty wealthy neighborhood with all the houses being quite spacious and nice. Chad's house was no exception. The front was all decorated with stone and brick and had the word Dowalski engraved on a metal plaque mounted above the garage. It seemed that Colin, Steve, and Frank were already there waiting for me. Chad had parked their bright red convertible right in the street in front of the house, and so everybody could see it as they drove by. I rang the doorbell and Chad let me in. He was dressed in the typical football letterman jacket and jeans as usual, but now wore a Santa hat to get in the holiday spirit. He made sure to wear the hat towards the back of his head so as to not mess up the perfect blonde bro swoosh. He also wore his shades even though he was indoors.
What's up, bro? Ready to party in style tonight?
Sure am. Hey, where should I place my gift for the white elephant later?
Right over here,
Chad replied, pointing to a small pile of gifts under a small Christmas tree by the front door. I placed down my gift, which is just a $45 cologne that I picked up from Macy's earlier that day. I took off my shoes before Chad led me into the living room where Colin, Steve, and Frank were all lounging on the sofa. Colin was simply scrolling through Instagram. Meanwhile, Steve and Frank were versing each other in Clash Royale.
Oh man, what the fuck was that?
Steve shouted. Frank looked pretty funny that day. He'd just gotten a fresh new buzz cut and was wearing a freshly knitted Christmas sweater. It had seemed like he had gained weight too since the last time I saw him, which is weird because I literally saw him a few days ago in school and he did not have this extra weight that he did now. I guess with the holidays and all, people like Frank were already beginning to have their toll taken on him, and Frank's body fat percentage was no exception. Steve, on the other hand, was scrawny like usual and wore nothing more than sweatpants and a stringy tank top. Steve, it's 9 degrees outside. Why the fuck are you wearing a tank top? I asked.
Man, this be on purpose. I've been trying to build up my cold resistance, and this be the perfect way to do it. I just wish it was colder though, cause this shit ain't nothing compared to what I used to live back in the hood.
Alright then. You do you, I guess. Little did I know, however, that me asking Steve about his choice of clothing was enough for him to get distracted from Clash Royale and for Frank to win the game.
Yep. Looks like I win again, Steve. But man, what the fuck? I told you not to use them double mega nats. Yo, bros, chill out. It's Christmas Eve. No time for a bro arguing. Why do we have a goose to marinate?
Chad said as he motioned for us to come into the kitchen.
I've been working on this bad boy all day long, and boy am I hungry.
Sure enough, sitting on the kitchen island was a 25-pound whole goose in which Chad was about to marinate before putting it in the oven for Christmas dinner. Chad claimed he learned how to cook from his pops and had been spending all year learning how to make the perfect Gaines grub meal. It appeared that he had already dressed the goose though, and I mean that literally, as he actually put a bow tie and such on along with a bunch of other festive decorations.
Oh shit, man, I've been looking forward to this bitch all day.
Same, replied Colin.
I don't really like a goose. Do you have chicken nuggets instead? I don't think I have those, but
Chad said as he began digging around in the freezer.
I do have a red brew Baron pizza. Yay!
Frank squealed.
Heh, and this is why people like Buzzman will never get to the gains. I've been working on my biceps all year. This goose is just where I need to finish them up.
Steve explained. Except Steve didn't actually have any biceps. Even though what Steve said wasn't nice. It was true. Frozen pizzas like that are terrible for building muscle and becoming fit, but Frank is Frank, so I rolled with it. Chad put the frozen pizza in the oven, along with the goose. After that, we agreed to get this white elephant underway. Shouldn't we try and get more people over first? I suggested. I don't think many people would be available today at Christmas Eve, remember? Most people's families aren't touring wineries in France this time of year, and most of them are spending time with their children, Colin replied.
Not so fast there, bros. I happen to know one person who's always looking for a good time,
Chad mentioned. Chad then whipped out his phone and opened up his Snapchat messages. He then clicked on the contact for none other than Speck Wildhorse.
My buddy Speck is always someone who is pretty reliable.
Speck Wildhorse is a kid in our grade at school. He and his family live on a farm and is sort of like a cowboy, but not. He's a pretty old-fashioned type of dude, however, and like Chad, is super chill. He's always looking for some adventure and breaking the norms, as he calls it. Anyway, Chad shot Speck a message through Snapchat. Here's their exact conversation.
You, my buddy, are you up for a good old white elephant at my house today? No can do now. My family's over and we always spend Christmas Eve together. They won't let me go outside such an occasion. Well, that's too bad, bro. The bros and I are chilling at my crib right now, and tonight we're gonna go on a little holiday broventure. Did you say broventure? Sure did, bro. But before that, we're gonna indulge our games with some cherry pie and eggnog. On second thought, I might just have to come on over. At night, of course. I'll wait till my folks are sound asleep before sneaking out and cruising on over. Sounds like a plan. Speck is coming over tonight,
Chad announced.
Let's go. If there be anyone who can rely for the best of adventures, it be my shit Speck,
said Steve. I must admit, I was pretty excited when Speck arrived as well. He's never boring and is always spontaneous when it comes to adventure. The five of us then went to sit in a circle in the living room. Chad took residency in his Pops' armchair recliner. Steve, Colin, and I sat on the couch, and Frank lied down on the floor.
Let's get this white elephant into business.
Yep, who should we start off first, though? Said Colin. Let's just start with Chad, I suggested. Chad grabbed a gift from the coffee table and opened it. It was right then and there that I knew our white elephant wouldn't have much of a mystery when it came to trying to guess who brought each gift, because it was quite obvious.
Pods, I don't really like to vape, and it interferes with the gains. It is what it is, though. Right, bros?
Chad proclaimed as he opened his gift. Steve, why the fuck did you give pods for this? Colin asked.
Man, I had this man swing by puffing stuff on the way here, so I could pick up my nick. I figured this may well kill two birds with one stone.
Up next is Frank's turn to grab a gift.
Yay! A pizza rail!
The pizza rail, quote-unquote, was essentially a lazy man's device that made it so you could lie down in bed, whilst having a frozen pizza or something be fed to you via the automated rails. It looked very cheaply made, and it was also pretty obvious that Frank had literally just intentionally picked his own gift, as no one else besides maybe Chad would bring such a lazy abomination to the exchange. Then it was Steve's turn. Instead of grabbing a gift though, he went and stole back his pods from Chad. Chad didn't mind and went up to grab a cylindrical looking gift from the coffee table as his replacement. He then unwrapped some protein powder. It was cookie butter or brownie flavored, whatever. It looked pretty junky for a post-workout supplement.
Oh, bros, perfect. This will ensure that the wintertime book this year goes to plan.
I think you knew what you were doing when you bought that as your own gift, I said.
Maybe so, bro, but you know what they say. Smart work outweighs hard work.
Colin went up to grab a gift next. There were only two left up there, so he just grabbed the one that wasn't his own. He unwrapped it and revealed the cologne I bought from Macy's, and he seemed to like it. And finally I went and began to unwrap the last gift up there, presumably the one that Colin had bought. It was a brand new cook pot that you can use when going like camping or whatnot, which I was more than happy with.
And that, bros, concludes the annual Dewalski White Elephant.
The five of us then decided to sit and relax for a while. We were all starving, but the goose still had another 15 minutes on, so we popped on some YouTube on the living room TV to pass the time. Chad selected some prank video YouTube channel, and it was titled Trampoline Park Overnighter, and next we all got comfy. Not 2 minutes into the video, however, and we heard the sound of the doorbell ring. We were all confused. Who could be at the door? All of Chad's family were in France, and he claimed that no packages were scheduled to be delivered that day either. Think Speck was able to come on over early? Said Colin. Let's go see, I replied, as Chad, Colin, and I all went to the front door to answer. The doorbell began ringing more and more sporadically as we walked down the main hall, which was weird. We opened the door and saw who it was. It was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. He appeared to be going around the neighborhood caroling, as he immediately broke out in song as soon as we answered the door. He was singing the all too well-known Christmas song, It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year. Except he had made up his own parody to it. Here it was.
It's the funkiest time of the year. Every lots of boys and much scheming and funkiest cheer. It's the funkiest time of the year. Merry Christmas, boys!
Herbert exclaimed. Herbert, what the fuck are you doing here? Colin demanded.
I'm just spending the afternoon going from house to house, spreading Christmas joy. But I am on a mission. My name is Ernie the elf, and it is my sole honor and duty that Santa Claus sent me on a special Christmas Eve errand. That is to go around each and every house and inspect chimneys to make sure they're fit for Santa's visit later tonight. And your boys' house is right up on my inspection, according to my list.
Herbert looked absolutely and utterly ridiculous. He wore a full and complete elf costume, including the pointed curl shoes, green and red skirt and all. He also had a mistletoe hanging in front of his forehead, which is attached to a hat just in case of any spontaneous encounters, as he claimed. Herbert had gained a ton of weight too, and his crazy hair was so wild that it stuck out from all angles, even with the hat on. Herbert, you are not coming inside this house. We know that Santa's not real, and he definitely wouldn't send elves like you to inspect chimneys. He's never done that.
Well, of course Santa's real. He's changing things up a bit at the North Pole this year. Hence why he sent his most charming young elf down to not only inspect chimneys, but also to taste the Christmas cookies he'll be eating tonight.
Herbert, you better leave now before I call the cops.
Well, bro. It's Christmas Eve, and even though jolly old Saint Nick may not be real, having an elf inspect the chimney wouldn't be too bad of an idea,
Chad said. Wait, Chad, but I began, but it was too late. Herbert had already barged his way in through the front door and was in the process of making a beeline to the living room.
Yay! Herbert's here!
I heard Frank squeal.
Now this chimney looks exquisite indeed.
Colin, Chad, and I raced back down the hallway and back into the living room. Herbert was now crouched over the fireplace. He had a tape measure out and appeared to be taking measurements of its dimensions. Herbert, what are you doing?
I'm just making sure this chimney and fireplace is big enough for Santa to fit down tonight. When I'm getting stuck after all, but luckily, this one seems to be the perfect for tonight.
Wait, what do you mean for tonight? Colin asked, but it was too late. Herbert was already running out of the house. We could faintly hear him snickering to himself as he ran out through the front door. We then caught sight of him running down the hill and into Chad's backyard, all while snickering. As he did so, he then proceeded to disappear into the dense woods towards the railroad tracks. We then looked on the floor near the fireplace and realized that Herbert had left a note for us. It read in extremely messy handwriting.
And remember, don't you boys go leaving tonight. You must stay in the house, or Ernie the elf will be after you boys.
I simply crinkled up the note and threw it away.
Whoa, it'd be a relief that weird-ass motherfucker's gone.
Steve stated. Yeah, I know. Chad, make sure that tonight we lock all the doors and windows. We then tried to forget about Herbert and resumed the trampoline park video. Just then, the timer for the oven went off, indicating that the goose was now ready to be consumed.
Let's go eat, bros.
Chad said as we all sprang up from the couch and headed into the kitchen. Chad put on some oven mitts and took the goose out, along with Frank's frozen pizza.
Oh, man, this shit looks gas.
Steve exclaimed. If I was being honest, however, that was probably a bit of an over-exaggeration. Don't get it twisted. It looked good. Maybe not gas, though, like Steve claimed it to be. Chad took the kitchen knife and began cutting the goose open.
Get your plates ready, bros. This'll be the gains meal of a lifetime.
We did just that. Chad then sliced up the goose, and we all put some slices on our plate. It seemed that he had overcooked it a little, though, because the inside portion of the meat seemed to be all dried up and wrinkly. Colin and I ate it nonetheless, however. Steve poked at his food for a little bit before making a remark.
Man, it's cutting season. Gotta start early if you want to get them washboard abs by summer. Even though I already got them. Can't be slacking though like a fucking bitch.
But I knew that in reality, Steve just didn't like the goose. Chad didn't seem to be too fond of his own cooking skills either, as he claimed he would save his for lunch the next day. Frank took his pizza back to the living room and lied back on the floor. Frank, why aren't you eating your pizza up here with the rest of us? Colin asked.
I wanted to start my pizza rail.
I then went over to help Frank set up the pizza rail, as it had some assembly required. I showed him how to use things like a wrench and how to tighten nuts and such. Frank squealed as I finished the assembly. I then put the pizza rail over him as he lied on his back, head facing the ceiling. I then put the whole pizza on the two rails and hit the on button on the device. The two rails began moving towards Frank's mouth, carrying the entire pizza with it. There's no way this is gonna end well, I thought to myself. And I was right. Frank opened his mouth and prepared to chow down. The pizza then slid off the rack and splattered directly onto Frank's chubby face, spilling on his Christmas sweater as well. It made a huge mess.
I guess not everything works like it says in the box.
Frank said as he laughed frantically, accepting his fate that pizza was spilled all over his face. I helped Frank up, and he proceeded to still eat a few slices of the pizza off the carpet, but it's not like it helped to make the situation any better, as it was still a mess. Chad, where does your family keep the cleaning supplies?
Right in the closet over there, bro.
Chad replied with his mouth full of fruitcake as he pointed over to a closet near the pantry. I went to the closet and found a bottle of stain remover specialized for carpet. I spent the next 5 minutes trying to get the pizza sauce stains out of the carpet, but it was no use. I got a lot of it out, but there would probably forever be a remnants of Frank's failed white elephant gift stained in there. We all finished up eating dinner now and went back into the living room. It was around 6:30 in the evening and it was all the way dark outside. We all agreed that it was movie time.
Which Christmas movie would you bros like to watch? Perhaps The Grinch for some holiday fun. Or maybe we could watch The Nightmare Before Christmas, but that one may be a little too scary and we won't want any negative energy impacting the games, now would we, bros?
How about the Polar Express? I suggested.
Now my man's talking,
Exclaimed Steve. And so it was set. Chad went on to Prime Video and rented the Polar Express movie for $2.99. The Polar Express was always one of my favorite movies. Good plotline and insanely great animations as well.
Let's get it. Time Hanks be to go,
Steve remarked. Now, that statement was something I think we could all agree with. Chad then started the movie. All was going smooth, both inside the movie and outside the movie. Steve and Frank seemed to be enjoying the movie a little too much though. For example, once we made it to the scene where the conductor brings out the hot chocolate, Frank immediately became hyper.
Hot chocolate!
Frank exclaimed. He leaped up from the couch and began prancing up and down in some random burst of energy. Frank danced throughout the entire hot chocolate scene. Steve was quite amused by the scene as well.
man. That shit looks lit for man, Chad. We better be making some of that hot chocolate tonight.
Of course we will now, Stevie-O.
After the hot chocolate scene, Frank plopped back down on the couch. All went by calmly until about 10 minutes later. This is when the girl told the train conductor she lost her ticket. So she was taken up to the top of the train. The nerd said that the conductor was going to throw her off the train due to standard railroad policy, and so the main kid went up after them. That was when he found the hobo in the blizzard atop the train. 5 minutes later, and we're at the part where the main kid and hobo are skiing down the train.
Yo, man, we have to try that shit tonight. My phone weather actually says it be snowing right now. So when we go out for an adventure, we can find a train to do it all.
Steve, that's not how it works in real life, Colin replied. I'm pretty sure you'd be dead if you tried that.
Shut up, man. What did you know? I've been going skiing in the high mountains all my life. And if I can handle that shit, then I can handle some pussy-ass train. I was actually supposed to be going to the Winter Olympics in 2022 in China, but I couldn't go because them Chinese motherfuckers and I got a shit ton of smoke. Even start crushing them ass in the hot sriracha noodle making contest.
I didn't take what Steve said too seriously. I looked outside though, and sure enough, it was snowing. But I highly doubted that Steve would be going train skiing that night like he claimed. The rest of the movie went well, and after it was finished, Chad flicked back on the lights.
What do you all want to do next?
It was around 8 p.m. now, so we weren't necessarily tired yet. We wanted some adventure. Luckily, just at that moment, we all witnessed headlights shining through the windows at the front of the house. We went to peek out the curtains and saw an old-fashioned Model T car from the 1920s parked in Chad's driveway. We immediately know who it had to be. We saw the driver get out of the car and turn it off. They wore a massive black trench coat with a fedora. They also carried a massive grocery bag with them. It was the one and only Speck Wildhorse.
Come on in, bro,
said Chad as he let Speck in. Speck was our age and was pretty tall, about 6'3" in height. He was pretty skinny and also seemed to rock the constant 5 a.m. stubble with his patchy beard. He had jet black hair that is always slicked to both sides with a taper in the back. He always dressed super formally, even for casual events, and is very old-fashioned.
Hello now, Chad. What's up, everybody else?
Said Speck as he tipped his fedora in a polite greeting. Seems like your family went to bed early, I said.
Yeah, I'm going to pumpkin bow at any time at 7:30 p.m., even on Christmas Eve. Oh, I brought gifts for everybody.
Frank responded. Man, Speck is always known to be quite the generous man. Amongst the ladies at school, he's known as the biggest gentleman. Yo, thanks, Speck. You didn't have to bring this, I told him.
Oh, just a little thank you for allowing me to chill with y'all tonight.
Next, everyone opened up their gifts from Speck. Frank got a Roblox poster for his bedroom. Steve got a weed-scented candle. Colin got a $200 outdoor shop gift card. Chad got an assorted sampling package of pre-workouts. And finally, I got a $300 gift card to Buffalo Wild Wings. Wow, Speck, that's really nice of you, I said in shock. I guess I'll be taking y'all out to lunch tomorrow then.
Sounds like a plan. This candle smells lit.
Everyone seemed happy with their gifts. We then stood around in Chad's living room, talking about what to do next.
How about we go out for a night adventure, dog? I gotta get my train skiing on.
I like that idea now. I'm always trying to live life on the very edge. All too often our modernized lives get too complacent and dull. Some old-timey adventure is great for warming up our feet and our minds.
Chad then went to feel outside and shivered.
I don't know, Bruce. I might have to sit this one out. It's pretty chilly out there, and I don't want to catch a case of the sniffles.
Frank seemed to agree as well, as he too wanted to stay inside.
Well, why you two pussies huddle up inside? The rest of us gonna be getting that cold resistance on.
That's right, Steve. Us modern humans need to stop being so soft and fragile. Life is about stepping outside of our comfort zone and going for an extreme, off-the-charts adventure is just what we could all use.
And so it was set. Speck, Steve, Colin, and I were to go outside for a night adventure in the snow. Meanwhile, Chad and Frank stayed inside playing Roblox or whatever else Frank likes to play these days. The four of us bundled up in our winter gear, grabbed some flashlights, and stepped outside. It was freezing out there. Snowy too, as there was already about 7+ inches on the ground. I'm still amazed that Speck was able to drive such a shitty car over here in such weather. Luckily though, there was no wind, or would be forced back inside very quickly. We then got to walking. We rounded Chad's side yard and down the hill towards the woods. I glanced behind me and noticed Speck all huddled up in his wool trench coat as he shuffled his way down the hill. Next thing we knew, the four of us were standing at the edge of a dense forest of white pine trees. The snow fell without a sound and gave the night a very eerie feel to it, but we pushed on nonetheless. After about 5 minutes of walking through the woods, we came across the railroad tracks. There was a large creek just past the railroad tracks, which indicated we were at the bottom of a hill. Not good if Steve wanted to do any of that skiing. Not that he'll be able to do any at all, as the railroad tracks were completely flat and just simply went through some woods. Steve, I don't think any trains will be coming through here. I highly doubt it, Colin said as he shivered. I'm pretty sure we're all shivering, even the tough man, Steve.
Once a train comes, I'm finna hop on and crunch some snow powder hobo style.
Steve, I highly doubt any trains coming through here, especially not at night in this weather, Colin repeated.
How would you know what you're talking about? Again, I spent years grinding out the slopes of all the trains across the country. I know exactly what the train routine is.
Steve insisted that we wait on those train tracks until a train came. I deep down knew that one was likely not going to come, but Steve was acting more stubborn than usual that night.
Hey guys, isn't it also illegal to be trespassing on railroad tracks? I heard online that it is.
I'm pretty sure it is illegal, but for real, no one's gonna catch us out here on the tracks, let alone even care, I replied. I then glanced over at Speck. His wool trench coat didn't seem to be doing too good of a job at keeping him warm, because he literally looked like a Christmas tree being shaken of all its loose pine needles when you pick it from the tree farm. That's just how much he was shivering. Don't get it wrong, we were all cold, but Speck seemed to be exaggerating the cold even for what it was. Speck, if you're that cold, you realize you can just head back inside Chad's house. It's right up the hill, Colin said.
Oh, no, guys. It's not a good idea at all. You should always have a buddy with you when you're walking alone at night, in case something happens.
Speck, I can see Chad's backyard from down here. He still didn't seem convinced though.
I think it's best if we all head back. It isn't safe to be standing on railroad tracks, especially at night if the cops are called.
Man, Speck, I thought you'd be a tough man just like me. Turns out you'd be just as big as a big chispas man.
Steve pointed out. Speck then got a tad defensive.
Well, in my defense, I actually came out here. Frank still dwelled on inside. Though in his case, I think Frank and Chad are actually making the smart choice on this one. You know, I'm all for living their life on the edge and everything, guys. But there comes a point we gotta draw the line between adventure and danger.
As much as I knew that Speck was just being a bitch, I did have to agree with him on that being out here was downright pointless. Sure, it was cool being in the snowy night for 5 minutes or so, but standing in what felt like sub-zero temps waiting for some dumbass train to come that probably wouldn't come, that just didn't make any sense to me. Yeah, to be honest though, we should just head back, I said, in which Colin replied, agreed.
Fine, man, we can leave. I guess if I see that midnight train coming something from Chad's window, I can run on down and hop on for some night skiing,
Steve concluded. Whatever you want to say, Steve. The four of us were about to leave the train tracks and begin heading back through the woods and up the hill to Chad's house when we saw it. That's right, the faint light that appeared to be way down the train tracks. It looked to be more of a glowing object rather than a device used to emit light. Bobbed up and down as whoever was carrying the object got closer and closer to us. It was about 100 yards away from where we were now, and we were able to see that it was a glowing candy cane walking stick. Steve and Speck immediately got scared and confused, and I honestly didn't blame them.
Oh, what is it, guys?
Worried Speck. I looked up at him and saw that he had his hands to his mouth as he chattered, pathetic for an almost fully grown man.
Man, why there always gotta be some sketchy-ass weirdo out in the woods at night, gee?
Colin and I weren't so naive, however. We knew exactly what this was, based on what occurred earlier that afternoon at Chad's house. Quick, everybody hide, whispered Colin. We all did just that. Steve laid down in the snow and scooped some on top of him to try and camouflage in a way. Colin went and climbed up a small but scraggly tree. Speck chickened out and was sent jogging back up the hill towards Chad's house, which wasn't the smartest of decisions on his end, as then the mysterious entity holding the candy cane could see where we came from. And finally, I decided to keep things simple and hid behind the trunk of a large pine tree. The figure holding the glowing candy cane then arrived at where we were. I peeked from around the tree and could see who it was. It was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. I could tell because the faint light from the neighborhood up the hill was just enough to highlight his every feature. He still wore the elf costume, and I could see everything from his hairy knees all the way to that one wart on his cheek. He just stood there, doing nothing. I kid you not. Only sound we could hear at that moment was his heavy breathing, nothing else. The faint glow from the candy cane walking stick made the situation even more tense. I then remembered that note that Herbert left for us when he was looking at the fireplace and said how Ernie the elf would be after us if we left the house. I retreated my head back behind the tree. When I did, however, my right foot crunched down into the snow. This immediately alerted Herbert of my presence. I hoped he wouldn't act on his realization, but it was too late. I could hear the rapid footsteps of Herbert striding towards the tree I was behind. I then got jump scared, even though I was expecting it, when Herbert popped his chubby head around the tree trunk and greeted me.
Hello, Nick. Shouldn't you boys be in bed? Santa Claus won't come until you boys are fast asleep, you know.
Oh shit! Run! I shouted. The three of us did just that. We didn't run directly back to Chad's house yet, though. The plan is to run in the opposite direction first, to lure Herbert away from Chad's house, before making our way back once we lost him.
You fellas, get back here. We're officially on Santa's naughty list.
Herbert shouted as the three of us ran away from him, off into the woods. We had absolutely no idea where we were going. We didn't really care at that moment either. As long as we were able to get away from Herbert, then we'd be happy. The farther into the woods we ran, the darker the night seemed to get. The thicker the trees became, and the deeper the snow went. We glanced behind us and could still see the faint glow from the candy cane walking stick. We were getting pretty far from it, however, and so we decided we were in a safe zone. We walked a tad farther, though, just in case. 10 minutes had passed and we began walking up a hill. The forest then emptied us out into a remote farm field where the hill continued up. We were all beyond freezing cold at this point, and our flashlights didn't seem to be cooperating with single-digit temperatures. Guys, let's head on back. It's cold, and I'm sure Herbert probably got cold and tired and is headed home by now, too.
Man, why we head on home? I got a ski and this hill's perfect for grinding some powder.
Steve, I'm just gonna keep it straight with you, I replied. You don't even have skis.
Not to worry, my man. I'm making my own skis from what the woods provide.
Fine, but make it quick, I said. Colin and I figured that there was likely no point in arguing with Steve about this, as he's just too stubborn. We did some push-ups just so we could warm up a little bit, before Steve headed back into the woods to make his skis. 5 minutes later, he emerged from the trees with 3 large branches he found lying on the ground. They weren't at all straight, though, and looked to be pretty rotten. Steve, there's no way you'll be able to make skis with those, Colin told him. Just forget this whole thing.
Nah, man. Actually, these kind of sticks work best, since the curves in the wood help making them sharp turns and high-ass jumps that I'm known for doing.
Steve then began going through the process of making his skis. He explained everything as he made them.
So basically, this stick gonna go attached to this one. Then we gonna make an area where my feet go for maximum speed.
The finished ski product made by Steve is a complete and utter fail. It involved 2 rotten branches that had little grooves in the middle, where Steve claimed he put his feet on to use as skis.
Alright, man, let's test this out.
Steve then marched to the top of the hill to test out his skis. He used his shoelaces to attach his feet to the branches. He then used 2 sticks to use as ski poles to try and propel himself down the hill. Yeah, it didn't work. He fell over and made a complete wipeout. Seems like your skis didn't work out quite as you planned, said Colin.
What kind of fucking snow is this, G? This be some powdery shit. When I was skiing last year out in Alaska, the snow was all wet and packed down.
Steve replied. It's powdery because it's cold.
Man, fuck this shit. This hill's trash anyway. Come on, it's freezing out here. Let's go back to Chad's.
Colin and I had to catch up to Steve, as he was now in the process of storming off back into the woods towards the house. We agreed with him on going back, because it was frigid to a whole new level at that point, and going back to the heat by the fireplace sounded ultra appealing. 5 minutes later, and we were back inside of the woods where we came from, except we didn't recognize where we had come from before. The woods looked unfamiliar. Steve began becoming paranoid that we were lost. We're not lost, Steve. These woods can't be that big. We're just outside of a neighborhood. But Steve wasn't convinced.
I know what I know, G. And this be exactly like that one thing I saw on the TV show Lone Wolf, when the dude got lost in the woods and got his ass eaten up by wolves.
I don't think that's something we'll have to worry about. There's no wolves out here that I know of, and we're definitely not lost. If we just keep walking, then we'll see the back porch lights of Chad's house soon enough, Colin affirmed.
Okay, man.
Snow began falling heavier and heavier the longer we walked. We were in a stand of maple trees when we heard a very, very alarming sound. It sounded like a howl that was very gurgly.
Oh shit, man! The wolves be after us and I forgot to bring my strap!
Steve stressed. Colin and I were worried, but not in the way that Steve was. We knew what was really up. I think we might have a different type of wolf on our hands, said Colin. We could tell the wolf, quote unquote, was making its way closer to us. This is due to the consistent but gurgly howling that kept coming closer and closer every time. The three of us stood still in the pitch black woods, daring not to make a sound. The howling was soon accompanied by footsteps crunching in the snow as the perpetrator rounded a large tree. We shined our flashlights on him and saw that it was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. His pale and cheesy smile blinded our eyes as our flashlight beams landed on him. "What do you want?" I exclaimed.
You boys shouldn't be running off like that. You had me worried sick. How about we merrily make our way back to Chad's house so we can officially start the annual Ernie Worm holiday party?
Herbert, can you please just leave us alone? Colin begged.
Never! My legacy as Ernie the Elf means too much to this community, and me returning to the North Pole early will result in a Christmas disaster. Christmas is in my hands, you know?
Everybody run! I shouted. We all did just that. We ran some more. We were relieved beyond imagination, though, when we stumbled out back onto the train tracks and were able to see the overly bright Christmas lights of Chad's house up the hill. And so that's where we ran. We could still hear the faint screams of Herbert coming from not too far behind us, though, and so we had to hurry. We burst inside and locked the door behind us. We were all out of breath, but it felt great to get out of the cold. Frank, Chad, and Speck were all relaxed in the living room watching a nature documentary on the Arctic waters of the North Pole. Frank was lying on the floor like usual, and Chad and Speck were reclined on the couch sipping on some eggnog.
Yay, narwhals!
Frank cackled as he laughed frantically. I had no idea how one could find narwhals so amusing, like seriously.
Glad to have you back, Bruce. Frank, Speck, and I were just doing some lightweight reps on our intellect gains. The nice, relaxing nature documentary. Well, good dudes, right?
Asked Speck. Kind of, I replied. Why wouldn't we?
Is no police or anything? Right? You know, from on the train tracks?
No police. But we may have a bit of a different kind of problem on our hands. Just then I thought I heard something outside. I shushed everybody and told Chad to temporarily mute the TV. My ears then confirmed correct when we all heard the faint sound of footsteps crunching on the snow outside in Chad's front yard. Colin and I immediately knew what was going on.
What is it? What is it?
Speck worried.
Speak, I thought you were a tough man, not some pussy like Buzz Man.
I shushed everybody once more when I now heard the faint sound of the doorknob jiggling, accompanied by a faint but prominent. We were all frozen still, not knowing what to do. Colin eventually came up with a solid course of action. Okay, Chad, I need you to kill the lights. Then, we're gonna hide and pretend that nobody's home. We all agreed. Chad turned off every single light inside the house until the entire place was pitch black, just like outside. We then all hid in separate spots. I hid in the guest bathroom. Colin hid in a cleaning closet. Chad and Speck hid behind the large living room couch. And Steve and Frank hid underneath the dining room table. The frantic knocking continued, along with the screaming. Then, all went silent. The only sounds any of us could hear was the faint wind whistling outside, along with the crackling of the still-lit fireplace. Then, the weirdest of the weird happened. We began hearing the mechanical sound of a jigsaw. I peeked out from the bathroom and shined my flashlight to where I heard the jigsaw coming from. My heart sank in my stomach when near the front door on the wall, I witnessed the jittery movement of a 5-inch saw blade poking through. I then realized that the person outside was trying to cut a hole through the wall. It had seemed that the others noticed it too, because they had also all poked their heads out from their hiding spots. We all just watched, unsure of what to do next. The jigsaw continued cutting its shape in the wall. That's when we noticed the shape it was going for. It involved the outline of a head/triple chin on top and a chubby body beneath. Just then, the outline was complete and the section of wall fell through, landing on the floor of the foyer with a thud. We then saw who the user of the saw was. It was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. We could tell because the moonlight highlighted his every feature. Everything from the candy cane walking stick, which was still glowing, all the way to the elf hat. We then knew that we had to take action, but by then, it was likely already too late. Herbert used the exact outline of his body that was cut in the drywall to step inside the house. His entire silhouette was outlined in the moonlight, and his slow, heavy breathing that echoed throughout the entire house made the whole situation even more tense. Alright, now this was bad. We had failed to take action earlier, and now we were suffering the consequences.
Evening, fellas. I know you boys are hiding around here somewhere.
There's absolutely nothing we could do. Herbert was now inside the house, and we knew that if any of us dared to move an inch, we were all fucked. Herbert stepped farther into the house. I cringed to myself as he was tracking snow everywhere. Chad seemed to become really distraught by this, though, because he blew our cover.
No! Not the Detroit vintage rug!
He cried. The top of Herbert's elf hat then perked up and went absolutely still. Herbert then flicked on a light switch to reveal himself. I kid you not that I almost jumped out of my skin, like literally, upon seeing his current state. He was now made out of snow. Like literally 100%. He had kept all his features like his triple chin and even his nose hairs. The weirdest part though was that the snow didn't act like snow, rather it acted like traditional blubber. He kept human eyes and human features as well.
Feeling jiggly, eh, lads?
Herbert inquired as he jiggled his potbelly back and forth. That was it. Herbert had officially taken things too far. Colin got out his phone and called the cops. 5 minutes later, the cops arrived and Herbert was taken away. Man, I couldn't believe it. Herbert had just ruined Christmas Eve. It was around 11:30 p.m. now, and we were all beat and frankly, quite traumatized from what Herbert had done. It seemed that Speck was the most affected out of all of us. He was now curled up in a ball, huddled in the corner of the living room. He looked like he had at least need therapy. The five of us took a spare mattress from the guest bedroom upstairs and used it to temporarily cover up the hole in the wall from Herbert. It seemed that Chad would have quite a lot of explaining to do to his parents when they arrived home from France. Chad went up to his bedroom and Speck went home. The rest of us just crashed in Chad's living room as we were all tired to a whole new level. Overall, I'd say Christmas Eve would definitely be one to remember for quite a long time. On Christmas Day, I woke up around 8:30 a.m., feeling quite hungover from the previous night. It wasn't all bad, however, as that day, like I said, was Christmas Day. Colin and Steve were already up, but Frank and Chad were obviously still asleep.
Oh, I feel like asking.
Said Steve. Same, bro. Colin agreed. Steve pulled out his disposable pod and took a few hits as he scrolled through Snapchat. I figured that since it was Christmas, it'd be best to let Frank and Chad sleep in. Y'all want to go out for lunch later? I asked. I have that $300 gift card from Speck, remember?
All right, man. Buffalo Wild Wings sounds lit to me. Let's get it.
Steve exclaimed as he leaped up and began for the front door. Yo, Steve, chill. It's 8:30 in the morning.
All right, old fam. I'm just starving, that's all.
The next few hours weren't very exciting. Colin, Steve, and I just relaxed and watched some YouTube videos on Chad's TV. I decided not to eat breakfast that morning, as it'd probably be best to save my appetite for when I blew my gift card later. I then remembered what day it was and decided to give Buffalo Wild Wings a call, just to make sure they were actually open, since I know most places weren't. I got out my phone and looked them up, and here's the conversation I had with the worker. Hey, I'm just calling to see if you guys are open today. Actually, we are open. There's a catch though. What's the catch? Since it's Christmas, we're trying not to overwork our staff with a lot of customers, so we'll only seat you if it's just you. Okay, I'll see about that. Thanks anyway. What did he say? Asked Colin. I don't think you guys can come, unfortunately. The guy said only one person per party today. Ah, shit. Well, doesn't really matter, Colin replied.
Yeah, man. Buffalo Wild Wings is a low-key ass anyway.
Steve mentioned. You guys seem like you're coping. You realize you can just go another day, right? True, Colin said. I then looked at my gift card and saw when the expiration date was. Speck must have bought this gift card years ago, because the last day to use it was today. Oh shit, actually I do have to go today. I'll bring you guys back leftovers though, I told Colin and Steve.
Okay, word.
By now it was around 11 in the morning, and I figured heading out to use my gift card would be a pretty wise idea. I slid on my shoes, put on my jacket, and headed out the front door. It was freezing outside. My car thermometer read about -7 degrees Fahrenheit. The snow had piled up overnight too, meaning there was upwards of 1.5 feet on the ground. I took my time obviously driving into town, but soon enough, I was pulling into the parking lot of Buffalo Wild Wings. Unsurprisingly, I was the only one there. Next, I got out and walked inside. Hey, how you doing? A worker said unenthusiastically. He obviously was not happy about working on Christmas Day, and I don't blame him. He brought me to a table, and I said I was ready to order right away. So, what can I start you off with? A waiter said. I'll have one of everything, I replied suavely. One of everything? He replied, obviously shocked. Oh yes, I said what I said. The waiter nodded his head in agreement and disappeared into the kitchen to break the unfortunate news to the chefs who would be, for the next hour, possibly more, slaving away with every single item on the menu. I kind of felt bad for them, but on the other hand, they were all about to receive the biggest tip of their entire lives. That was because I intended on using the remainder of the loot on this gift card to give them at least a $20 tip each. 20 minutes went by and the first item of my massive order came, just some basic dry rub chicken wings. I was still starving, so I immediately dug in. It tasted pretty good and all. Before I was even halfway through the serving, more food came. This time it was some hamburger sliders with the side of fried pickles. I'll get to that once I finish this, I thought to myself. Just then, another plate arrived. A 20-inch diameter French fry basket with ranch dipping sauce. Then another plate came, then another, and another, and another. This is getting out of hand, I thought. Next thing that I knew was plate after plate after plate. The staff even had to slide over another table to accommodate all the extra food. I, on the other hand, was still working on that first bowl of dry rubbed wings. The plates were getting too insane now, and I was stuffed. I then realized that I may have made a mistake by ordering one of everything on the menu. Believe me, the Buffalo Wild Wings menu is massive. Luckily, I'd be able to pay for it all with my $300 gift card. For now though, I figured that I need a way to deal with all this food, as plates were still coming. I got on my phone and texted the group chat. Here's our conversation. Yo, I'm gonna need some backup over here at the Wild Wings. What did you do? I ordered one of everything on the menu, but I didn't realize how many items there were.
Say less, man. I need some grub.
They'll be over too.
20 minutes later and the whole squad arrived. Frank immediately went to chow down on the chicken fingers. Colin went to work on the salmon platter and chicken alfredo. And Steve went to help me with the vast plethora of chicken wings. And finally, Chad went to begin work on the dessert items.
You know, bros, my grandpops would always say, you only live once, so always eat dessert before dinner.
The five of us continued eating for another half hour or so. By the time we were all stuffed, it had seemed like we'd barely even made a dent in all the food. Just then, the waiter came by with a check. $500? I thought to myself, I was $200 short. The unfortunate reality then hit me that I'd have to take $200 out of my own money to pay for the rest of the meal.
Not to worry, bro.
Chad suavely said as he pulled out what appeared to be his dad's credit card.
It's covered on me.
Alright boys, payment's all good. Y'all have a great day, the waiter said, pretty pleased about his $30 tip from Chad. Even though we weren't able to finish all the food, we left the restaurant feeling pretty satisfied that day. I said goodbye to everyone and decided just to head on back to my house to enjoy the rest of my Christmas in peace. I needed some time to wind myself down after the past 24 hours. Believe me, I was about to get back in my car and drive off, but Chad stopped me.
Well, we don't want to call it a day just yet, bros. I say we all hop in the convertible, go for a joyride through the winter wonderland,
Chad suggested. That sounded like a good plan to me, and so I hopped in, as did everybody else. Even though it was below zero outside, Chad still kept the roof of the convertible down and seemed to be unaffected by the cold. This is weird, as he was literally complaining about how chilly it was back in the parking lot. He still had the shades on, and it all seemed chill. Meanwhile, the rest of us were shivering to a whole new level of the cold wind. Next thing we knew, we were cruising down House Pike Road near Linganore Creek. The snowy woods were a beautiful sight to see, and the sun gleamed brightly on the bare, virgin snow. As we were sat there trying to stay warm, I, for some reason, looked into Chad's rearview mirror. What I saw next would stick with me for the rest of my life. It was Herbert Ernie riding skis. He was still made out of snow and still wore the funky elf outfit. Even though Chad was driving down the road at like 40 miles per hour, Herbert was still keeping up with us. Not only was he keeping up with us, he was actually gaining on us. He used his overly long ski poles to propel his body down the hill. Before we knew it, he was right on our rear bumper. He now wore a pair of frosted goggles from the 1950s and held firm a cheesy grin. We were all sick and tired of this. Herbert, what the fuck do you want? I shouted.
You boys shouldn't be up here today. It's a fledgling.
Herbert exclaimed.
Man, leave our ass alone, G.
And which Herbert replied with a sharp
Never.
Herbert then proceeded to do the unimaginable. He grabbed onto the bumper of the convertible and hoisted himself inside. Exclaimed Chad. Herbert then detached his feet from the skis and sat on top of Chad's shoulders. He used his 3-inch long toenails to steer the car. Chad struggled to get Herbert off of him and ultimately was not able to do so, as Herbert was simply too fat. Long story short, Steve, Colin, and I were able to shove Herbert out of the convertible and into the ditch on the side of the road. None of us talked much on the drive back to Buffalo Wild Wings. We were done with the situation and done with Herbert. I think we were all pretty traumatized, to say the least, because of what Herbert had done. I got in my car and drove on home. I'll still have the next week of home alone, which would be pretty nice, at least until my parents got back from France. And that then concludes Ernie Claus is Coming to Town.